We're headed to Sydney, Australia to test out the Leica CL mirrorless crop sensor camera. I'll share the practical ins and outs of this camera, example images in a variety of lighting situations, and the pros and cons to see if it's worth the $3,700 price tag. Pack your bags, let's go.
Hey photographer, Jessica Whitaker here, and in today's video, I'm going to be walking you through my review of the Leica CL mirrorless crop sensor camera. Now, I'm going to be linking this camera down below if you're interested in reading just all of the specs that are in this camera, because this review will actually be more of a practical review, user experience, why I purchased it, what I love. I'm going to show some example photos, and I will be talking about some of the specs, the ones that are a little bit more just relevant. This video is designed to just give you a little bit of guidance if you're looking to purchase this camera or you're looking to add something like a Leica maybe to your collection. Hopefully this video will give you some pros, some cons, and you can see if it's a good fit for you and for your business. The camera that I shoot with within my own photography business and also here in YouTube tutorials, what I'm filming right now with is a Canon 5D Mark IV, and I absolutely love that camera. But I wanted a smaller, more compact camera that still had that almost that level that a Mark IV has when it comes to producing beautiful, high quality images. But I wanted something more compact that I could use on my travels. I landed on the Leica CL, and I got this at their Milan store. I haven't been inside a Leica store before actually getting this. I actually brought this with me and was able to truly use it for the first time outside of Milan on my first ever solo trip to Sydney, Australia. And so the example photos are all from Sydney, which I'm really excited about. But before we get into the review, I want to thank our sponsor for today's video, KEH Camera. KEH Camera is a place where you can buy and sell used camera gear, and it actually expands so much more outside of cameras. You can also get audio gear and lighting equipment, but I discovered KEH Camera about a year ago when I was looking to purchase a film camera, and film cameras are pretty hard to come by in real life. Like at thrift stores and camera shops, they're just like non-existent because film is so popular. So I was able to purchase one on KEH Camera. I got the Minolta X370. KEH was so kind to give you a 10% off discount code. So if you're interested in getting 10% off of your next order at KEH, you can use my code and I'll link that down below. And let's hop into the review. The lens that I chose for this camera was the one that came with it. It's kind of like the kit lens for the Leica CL. It's the 18mm f2.8 lens. Now, because this camera is a crop sensor, the lens, instead of being 18mm, it's more like 27mm. The guy at the Leica store who was helping me was trying to get me to purchase the 35mm. I actually typically always go with a 35mm lens. The reason I actually didn't end up with a 35mm, the 18 suited my needs so much more. Honestly, starting out with the actual size of the camera, I like that this is like a pancake lens almost. I like how it's low in profile, keeping the rest of the camera nice and sleek so that I can pop this into whatever purse I'm traveling with and doesn't limit me to only bringing a backpack or a tote bag like my Mark IV does. This camera to set up was a headache. It took me so long to figure out how to set it up and just to move it into manual mode, which is like so bizarre and it shouldn't be this complicated. And I thought maybe it was just me. It turns out Leica cameras are pretty difficult to set up. So I am almost thinking about making a video, literally just setting up, I'll reset my camera, setting up my Leica CL, because the resources on YouTube are very, very limited, and it took me a long time to find a video that just walked me through setting it up and moving it into manual mode. So this is definitely not something that's intuitive that you can just turn on and start shooting with. It shouldn't be that difficult to shoot in manual. It was a huge pain. Now, the top of the camera has these dials on it, and it has an on and on switch. It has the LCD screen, but then these dials are what you can customize to control the ISO, the aperture, and also using the dials is how you switch out of manual mode and into P or AP or whatever it might be that you want to shoot in. So this does require a bit of muscle memory, especially if you're going to be switching out of manual mode. I honestly I do not see myself ever going out of manual mode. I just don't on any of my cameras. I'm always in manual. So I don't think I'll have that problem, but it's not the most intuitive thing. It's beautiful, it takes great photos, but there is quite a big learning curve when it comes to using the Leica. I should mention this is my first ever Leica. I've never shot with one before. I've shot with a few mirrorless cameras before. I did a video with the Hasselblad 1DX or 1XD, I get the name mixed up. I did that last year. I have a video on it. I don't own the Hasselblad camera. I wish. It's like a $10,000 mirrorless camera, but we did a tutorial on it, and that was my first time ever shooting mirrorless. Then I've experimented around with the EOS R before. I've had some friends who have that, and that's kind of fun. I haven't tried it out enough to really have an opinion on it. This camera also has Wi-Fi, which was a huge important element for me when I'm traveling. I want to be able to just take the photos from my camera to my phone and edit them, throw them up on Instagram, right? So I do love that. And this camera does have video mode, but I will not be using this for video mode. If I'm ever using any kind of camera for video, it's my Mark IV. If I just want it for personal, I'm just gonna use my iPhone. I have the iPhone 11 Pro. It does a great job. This doesn't have built-in stabilization in it, and it also doesn't have the option to do a microphone. It doesn't have like a mic jack. And just also FYI, there is no built-in flash. That's fine with me. The viewfinder has an electronic viewfinder. So you're looking through and you're seeing an electronic screen. The screen on the back is really, really generous. It's like 3 inches. It's super crystal clear. I really, really love it. And you also have your play, your function, and your menu. And you can do a custom menu too, so you can have all your favorites. One thing interesting about this camera is, though it has touchscreen when you're on something like the menu and when you are on the playback scrolling through your photos, it doesn't actually have touchscreen like to focus or when you're on the main menu here. I think that is so weird. I'm just gonna be honest. Like, you can't touch to focus, you can't tap. So the fact that I can't just easily tap ISO and adjust it on the screen like I would with my Canon cameras, and that's part of why setting up the camera was a headache, because I'm thinking, oh, let me just tap and move out of manual mode. You know, you do a lot more with the dials up here than you would with another camera. Just something important to note. We are now going to move into the example images. So I am taking you along with me to Sydney, Australia. I am so excited, and we're gonna work through quite a few different lighting situations. We have shade, we have backlighting, we have direct sunlight, we have low light, low artificial light, and low light outdoors. I'm really excited to show you the photos and kind of just walk you through as much detail as I can via voiceover. These images are my personal travels, but I think that they serve as pretty good examples for what you might be looking to do with this camera. Like I mentioned earlier, the images are all shot in manual, and I will include on the screen all of the settings just to also give you a bit of an idea. Okay, I just took some photos around the Sydney Botanical Gardens with a Leica CL in direct sunlight. Some were a little bit shaded, but most of the photos I took were in direct sunlight, and it performed super well. I was shooting on anywhere from 2.8 up to 4.5. I like to have the aperture as wide as possible, but over here, for instance, this scene I shot on 4.0, 4.5. It's performing really well. I'm finding myself only using this versus my iPhone, which was kind of the point of getting this, something a little bit more high quality that you can edit the RAWs on. I'm really happy with it, but we'll see throughout the day. I'm gonna try it at golden hour with some portraits. I'll keep you updated.
The images at the Botanical Gardens and the Opera House, I think, turned out great and exactly served the purpose of why I purchased this camera in the first place. I wanted something that I could just snap around, I could pop in and out of my bag easily, and I really love the focal length for these particular images. Now, indoors is kind of a different story. So I did indoors in artificial lighting in my hotel room, as you can see in the mirror selfie and then in the image on the left. The camera can handle this lighting all right, but the higher you turn the ISO up, the more noisy the image becomes, which is kind of the case on a lot of cameras, but I don't know if you would necessarily expect that on a camera that is $3,700. You can easily conceal and fix this in post, but it is something to kind of keep in mind. This is also shooting as wide open as the lens will allow. As for the image on the left side of the screen, we were in natural lighting, and I was just shooting around the financial district, I think is what it was called. It was where my hotel was, and the beautiful houses in Paddington. I think that this camera did a fantastic job in this more shaded area and also capturing the detail really well. Everything was razor sharp for the most part, and I love the focal length for these kind of images. I think overall exactly what I needed to accomplish. And these kind of images are what I intended to use the camera for in my personal travels. Then we move back into the Royal Botanical Gardens during golden hour, and I shot some portraits with backlighting. Now remember, I only have an 18mm lens with a Leica CL, but I think that this is still a gorgeous portrait. Typically I would do like a 35mm or a 50mm for portraits, but overall I think that this was fantastic. It isn't something that I would put into my portfolio or use during a client session or any other portrait tutorial I were to be making. But remember, that's not why I bought it. I bought this for my personal travels. But I do have to say that this lens is still capable of, snapping some nice portraits, even if you're not going to use it in a portrait photography session. Now we're going to be moving into dusk. So about 30 minutes after golden hour, we moved down to the opera house and did some portraits, and the fill light here is artificial light coming from the street lamps. Now I have to say, this camera does a really horrible job in this kind of lighting situation, and in any kind of low light, to be honest. It's extremely noisy and it doesn't handle it well at all. Like, to be honest, it looks like it was taken on a fax machine, in my opinion, which is pretty disappointing considering the price point of the camera and considering that other mirrorless cameras out there on the market can handle low light significantly better. Even in post-processing, it was hard to get rid of all of the noise. Even with this camera opened up all the way at 2.8, it still was horrendous quality. And I am coming from a 5D Mark IV camera, which is kind of known for its iconic high ISO minimal noise. And some might argue, well, this is a completely different camera and setup, but the thing is, the price point is about the same as a Mark IV, so you would think the capability would be somewhat similar. I'm on Bondi Beach doing some direct sunlight photos with the Leica CL. So far, I love it. I love it. I honestly think the shade and direct sunlight is where this camera shines the most. Like, look how crystal clear these images are.
All right, the Leica CL crop sensor mirrorless camera. Would I recommend it? Generally speaking, no. It's expensive. It's upwards of $3,000 after tax. For what it is, I think that the price is justified because of the images it produces are fantastic. This is one of the most affordable ones that they offer, especially with the lens. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. Leica is expensive, but maybe that's something that then you'd go into KEH camera, get one used, buy a lens used. You can save some money when it comes to buying something like a Leica. I really do think that there are other cameras out there at a lower price point that can give you all that you really want in a travel companion, essentially. Something that can take good photos, something that can handle low light well, and something that also can do video well. But for me, because I already have a few different cameras, like my Mark IV that I use for video, this works for me perfectly, and it fills in the gap for me and my business. This is one of the most affordable ones that they offer, especially with the lens. I think that if you were to purchase a Leica CL, you really do need to know what you are getting yourself into when it comes to this camera and what does not come with this camera. But I do hope that this video was able to help you gauge where you might be at when it comes to the Leica CL camera. I know it wasn't the most technical review, but I told you at the start this wasn't technical. This is more practical. And if you want all those specs. I will have the listing link down below and you can read up a little bit more for yourself. But I hope that this was able to kind of point you in the direction of if the Leica CL is something you're interested or not, if it will suit you or not. Because this is such a big purchase, I do recommend that if you're able to go to a Leica store and try it out in person before you make the move, whether you buy a new one from Leica or you buy one used on KEH, just so you can kind of feel it in your hand, you can try it out and see if you like the experience of shooting with it. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to drop a comment down below. I'm interested to hear what you have to say. Do you have a Leica camera? Are you interested in Leicas? Would you like me to do a tutorial shooting with the Leica camera? I could totally do that, because here I just shared more example photos, but if you're interested, I can make a tutorial. I typically do have mostly tutorials here on this channel, so if you want to be the first to know when a new tutorial for your photography business comes out, be sure to hit subscribe. And if you're a photographer and you're looking for a creative community that's encouraging and kind, be sure to check out the Build and Bloom Facebook group. I will have that linked down in the description box below. Build and Bloom is one of Facebook's most highly engaged photography communities, so that group will be down below, as well as a link to my online photography workshop. Whatever else I can find that I have for you for free, I'll link down in the description box below. I believe in you and your business, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!